You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, episode 25. And now, here are Craig and Jeff.
Welcome back to another installment of the Tricorder Transmissions, and here we are again, your host, Jeff Hewlett.
And Craig Cohen.
Good to be back with you, Craig, for our 25th episode. It's pretty cool, huh? It's pretty much a landmark.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I remember when, on my other podcast, the Camel Clutch Cinema with Guy Hutchinson, when we hit our 25th episode, we talked about the fact that now we can sit down, or people can sit down, and they can pretty much listen to us for an entire day.
Wow, that's actually a good point. I would not have thought of that. You got a good point there.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, and it's very cool, and it's been awesome getting to these 25 episodes with you, and I look forward to the next 25 and the 25 after that.
Yep, and we'll have plenty more coming down your way. So this episode is significant in a couple of ways. One is that we're kind of changing up our format here for this episode. Usually, we have our intro and we go into the episode, and we don't necessarily talk about the episode itself in the introduction. But because this episode has some interesting social commentary in it, and there was stuff that we wanted to talk about that we didn't have time to talk about during our commentary, we actually recorded the commentary first, and now we're going back and we're recording a little bit of an extended introduction. We're going to talk about a couple of interviews with Shatner and Nimoy, where they talk a little bit about the episode and some of the things that went on during the actual taping of this episode. So before we get to that, though, as great a high point as this is for us as a 25th episode, I do unfortunately have some sad news to share. It appears that Hal Sutherland, the director of the first season of the animated series and co-founder of Filmation Studios, has passed away.
Oh,
yeah!
Goodness, did that just happen?
Yeah, just announced today. They didn't give a date when he passed away, but they acknowledged today that he did pass away.
Oh, that's
kind of sad.
Yeah, that is sad. Filmation, they did a lot of great work, and the animated series is something that I enjoy immensely. So
yeah, it's a shame.
I'll probably watch an episode of the animated series this weekend to sort of pay my respects.
Yeah, me too. When I was a little kid, I really loved the He-Man cartoon series that was done by Filmation. That was a big one for me, and also Fat Albert.
Yeah, I
loved Fat Albert too. So I didn't realize, I had looked this up just before we started talking, and he actually started working as a Disney animator in 1954, working on Sleeping Beauty.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
So yeah, I have a good friend of mine who's a huge fan of Sleeping Beauty. She collects everything Aurora related. So sad day to learn that Hal Sutherland has passed away. We have a couple of interview clips that we're going to be sharing. We're going to be playing them here during the intro and then talking about them. And I'm going to launch right into this with an interview with William Shatner that was broadcast a few years ago on the Sci-Fi Channel when the remastered episodes were airing. And this is Shatner talking about the overall plot and the underlying social commentary of this episode. So give a listen to this, and then we'll be back to talk about it in a minute.
The Devil in the Dark, written by Gene Kuhn, is a true classic. This episode is an examination of bigotry, intolerance, and ignorance. When faced with the unknown, mankind's initial stance has always been to regard it as the enemy and to obliterate it. But sometimes an enemy is not what it appears to be. In an early episode, The Man Trap, Kirk's first response was to destroy that story's villain, Salt Vampire. Here, in The Devil in the Dark, it becomes very important to Kirk to establish communication with the Horta. Even Kirk has his consciousness raised during his travels through space.
All right, we're back. So, Craig, what did you think about this? We've watched this episode. I know I've seen this episode quite a few times in the past, and this episode is very big on social commentaries. A lot of themes in this episode about bigotry and hatred. Do you get that from watching this episode?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, even more so after our discussion and hearing what William Shatner had to say at the beginning of his clip, and yeah, it's a good message, and it's surprising that 40 plus years later, we really haven't learned that lesson.
I know, it's kind of sad, and I can draw a lot of parallels to things that are still going on in our modern day here in 2014, and I see it a lot in my everyday life. Normal everyday people that make judgment calls about people and classes of people, and it's a shame that we haven't evolved much, especially considering Star Trek itself, the series, kind of had its early days in our own time period here. So we're actually starting to get to where, we're approaching where Star Trek is in its beginnings. So
yeah,
that prediction unfortunately hasn't come true yet. So one thing that Shatner mentions in this interview clip that I found really interesting, and something that I think I've mentioned on the show a couple times, is how Kirk's character grows, especially about the man trap and his reaction to the salt vampire and how it was, kill it, kill it, kill it. When it comes to the Horta, he seems to react quite differently.
Yeah, I thought that was neat, and that wasn't a connection I had made, and it shows the growth of that character within even the first season, which is very neat, because the casual Star Trek fan might not really think that Kirk had any kind of arc over the 3 seasons that the original series aired.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's one of the reasons why I am so endeared to this series in the first place, is that for a science fiction show, you can watch it on so many different levels, and the more you get involved with the show and learning about the characters, the more depth they get. And I loved seeing how the characters changed over the course of time and through the movies later on. So this was one of the big growing moments, I think, for Kirk, and it kind of feeds into the whole Prime Directive thing that they're growing into.
Yeah. The funniest thing about this whole thing is I don't remember Spock's attitude completely from the man trap, but it doesn't seem like Spock was as anxious to save the salt monster.
Yeah, no, well, he did express some remorse and some concern about the salt monster, but and this episode's a little bit different too. We'll get to that when we talk about the commentary itself. So, any more comments about this interview clip?
No, but I really enjoy those segments, and I've sort of searched and tried to find as many of those as I can to listen. I don't really remember watching these episodes when they were on Sci-Fi and they were doing these sort of inserts, but it seems like a really cool way to watch the show.
Yeah, definitely. I did catch a few of them during the run, but I didn't watch all of them, so a lot of these are new to me as well. So we're going to move on to another interview clip with Shatner from the same Sci-Fi airing of The Devil in the Dark. This one is a little more detail about the behind the scenes, things that were going on during the filming of this episode. So here, give it a listen, and we'll be right back.
For more than 30 years, I've been asked, what's your favorite episode? And my answer is The Devil in the Dark. Although the story is incredibly exciting and exemplifies the best characteristics that Star Trek had to offer, those are not the reasons why it's my favorite. On the second day of shooting this episode, I received a phone call that my father had died. So we were going to shut down production at that point. But as my flight to Miami wasn't leaving until the evening, I suggested we continue to shoot our scenes. I wanted to be surrounded by my other family, the Star Trek cast and crew. They were indeed my support system during a very difficult time.
All right, so pretty telling, huh? So Shatner's favorite episode is The Devil in the Dark.
Yeah, that was very cool to hear, and it's makes me feel even more surprised that this isn't an episode that I really had too much of a memory of. You know, I know on the episode we talk about how I this might be one of the episodes that I'd only seen once, and considering how important it is to William Shatner, you know, it kind of surprised me that it wasn't on my radar a little bit earlier.
It's funny because this is one of my favorites, and you know, and it's the reasons why it's a favorite for Shatner is different than why it would be a favorite for me. So it's kind of an unexpected reason that you know, it's more of a personal, deeply personal reason for him that he you know went through that, you know, family tragedy during the taping of this episode. But I think it was really interesting that he elected to stick around that day because his flight wasn't leaving till later. He chose to continue working. I mean, that's a lot of dedication to a
Yeah,
role.
yeah, and I think, you know, like he said, you know, he was able to spend time with his other family, and I guess the prospect of working through personal tragedy, there's some benefit there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another really cool thing that I took out of that was that if you read a lot about Star Trek and you watch movies like Galaxy Quest, you know, the prevailing opinion was that Shatner, you know, was a jerk and everybody hated him. But I don't think that's necessarily true. I mean, from moments like this, and we'll hear something in this Nimoy interview clip coming up, I don't I don't think it was that bad. I mean, I know he wasn't the easiest person to work with, but I think the stories may be a little bit overblown.
Sure, and you know, everybody brings with them sort of their personal baggage in terms of how they perceived things, and you know, it was probably hard for somebody like, let's say, James Doohan, who had a different role on Star Trek than William Shatner did. William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, and to a lesser degree, DeForest Kelley, they were sort of tasked with carrying the series. If one of those elements was removed, the series was going to suffer. Whereas some of the lesser cast members, that wouldn't have been felt as much, not to take anything away from what those people brought to the series. But I could see how that could sort of work its way onto the set
Sure.
and, you know, make things more challenging or more demanding depending on who you were. So I can't imagine it was easy for anybody, but I think the fact that Nimoy and Shatner have remained lifelong friends really speaks to the volume of sort of both men's character.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, they've appeared together and done conventions together, and I think it's great that they've both grown into their ongoing roles in the Star Trek universe. I know it's very well documented that early on, after this, you know, the series was canceled and conventions started, that the cast were kind of like, "What the heck is all this stuff?" And Nimoy writing the "I'm Not Spock" book, and
then writing "I Am
Spock, right? And then and you know, and Shatner kind of with that famous, you know, the
Get a Life.
the "Get a Life" comment. Yeah, so it's pretty interesting to watch them evolve and how they've stayed friends that entire time. So that's pretty.
Yeah, and it seems genuine too. I mean,
Yeah.
not to say that, you know, I mean, they're both actors, so you never know.
Right.
But the moments that I've seen with the two of them, they definitely seem like they have a genuine sort of affection for each other.
Yeah, I definitely can feel that. So moving on, we have one more interview clip that we're going to play, and this one is Leonard Nimoy talking about The Devil in the Dark. So let's have a listen to that, and we'll be back in a second.
Devil in the Dark, an excellent episode. It was about something important for me. It was about the way we tend to demonize the things that we don't know or understand, or the people that we don't know or understand. It was complicated because Bill Shatner's father died during the making of that episode, and he had to go off to Florida to deal with the funeral and what have you. While he was gone, I was doing this contact with the Horta, doing this mind meld, where I'm getting in touch with what it's experiencing. And we have shot it, and it's in pain. And I'm experiencing that pain with it, and I don't know exactly how I did it, but something like pain, something like that. Maybe bigger than that. And Bill was not there. Pain! Now, he came back 2 or 3 days later, and now it's time to put the camera on him. There was one shot where they shot across a double's shoulder. So you thought that Bill was in the scene while I'm doing that, but it was not Bill, it was a double. But now the camera has to turn around and we have to see Bill reacting to this. So he comes back and we turn the camera around on him. And he said, well, can Leonard show me what he did? I said, sure, I'll show you. So I walk over to the position and I said, it was something like this. Bill was, pain, pain. And he said, is that exactly the way you did it? I said, no, not exactly. Well, show me exactly what you did. Pain, pain. No, he said, let me see what you really did. So, pain, pain. And Bill was devilish. With a gleam in his eye, turns to the crew and said, will somebody give this guy an aspirin? He just sucked me right into it, you know, having a good time with me. I wanted to kill him. Well, Bill had that kind of a warped sense of humor.
All right. That was pretty interesting, huh?
Oh, yeah.
So, again, we hear a little bit more about the social commentary aspect and talking about how people demonize, what we don't understand or what we don't know. And, we talked about it before that that's still valid to this day. But I thought the really interesting part of this interview was the joke that Shatner played.
Yeah, somebody get him an aspirin.
Yeah, and, you think about it, and, Shatner is just coming back from his father's funeral, which must be a really emotional time, and stuff like that is very draining on a family. I know from my personal experience, deaths in the family have been really tough, for me, and being back to work a few days later, it's not the easiest thing to do.
No.
Especially, bringing his sense of humor back and goofing on Nimoy right away. It's pretty interesting.
Yes.
Kind of sheds a little more light on some of the friendships that went on behind the scenes, and I think it kind of helps to chisel away a little bit at the prevailing opinions.
Yes,
what they
definitely.
were like. Anything else you want to mention about this one?
No, it's just an episode that I'm glad we do this podcast because I get introduced to episodes that I might have overlooked or might not have considered watching when I went to go watch an episode of Star Trek. And it's cool to sort of have this episode now in the front of my mind as a special episode for a lot of different reasons. So one of the many benefits of doing this podcast, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun with this too in the last 25 episodes, and this episode in particular was a lot of fun because this is an episode that I've always been very fond of ever since I was a young child. It's one of the ones that's always stuck out in my mind, and being able to sit down and talk about it and do a little of this behind-the-scenes discussion with these interviews to add some more value is really great. So you want to get into the commentary?
Please, yeah, let's do it.
All right, so the air date for The Devil in the Dark was March 9th of 1967, and the remastered version aired on September 23rd of 2006.
Cool, and I have a really quick synopsis here. The Enterprise arrives at Janus 6, where an unknown monster is destroying machinery and killing the miners, threatening the entire mining operation.
Very cool. So, we are going to get started with our scene-specific commentary in 3, 2, 1. All right. And here we are approaching Janus 6.
Yeah, and I gotta say, we've talked a lot about the remastered effects, but this has to be, in my opinion, the best use of the remastering technology, if you will.
And a good example of tasteful use. I mean, you see, not only did they replace the map painting, but you had two guys actually walking around in the scene, making it look even more realistic.
Yeah, but yeah, like you said, they stayed true to the production design. They didn't incorporate their own ideas. There might be some subtle stuff there. I mean, I never really paused it and looked at it and compared it, but it adds so much, reality to that sequence.
It definitely does. And it's very good that it happens in a very historic stinger. Do you know why this is a historic stinger?
Somebody dies?
No.
Okay.
This is the only stinger in the entire original series that does not have any Enterprise crew members in it.
I was going to guess that as you were saying it, but
Yep.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't make that connection watching the episode.
It is the only one. So, it's the only one in the entire series. So, pretty cool.
Wow.
That this is a historic episode.
Yeah. I guess
Yeah.
that includes the one. What was the time travel one we watched where they went started with the Air Force?
Oh, Tomorrow's Yesterday.
Yeah. I guess that's a pretty long opening though, and the Enterprise is in it.
Yeah, it is. And
Yeah.
this episode is also has a historical significance. It is the only TOS episode with no female speaking parts.
Wow. Okay.
Not one single female speaking part. And part of that is because Uhura is not in this
Oh
episode.
right. Yeah. They're not on the Enterprise. I mean, the
No.
Enterprise they're barely on it.
Yeah, and no Sulu, of course.
Yeah.
So,
Again.
yeah, the Enterprise is only seen, the bridge of the Enterprise is the only part of the ship that's seen in this episode, and it's seen 2 times. And we just got a little bit of a taste of what's to come here.
I felt really bad for that guy because it was like they left him there, and even though they were giving him reassurances, it was almost like everybody knew that he was toast.
Yeah, they did. And it was sad because he had such hope because he asked if the Enterprise was coming, and he's like, yeah, they're on their way. You'll be okay. They're coming. So, poor guy, he just kind of got ditched there.
Oof. And I kind of like how they referenced that he was burned to a crisp, but they didn't show it. And I'm sure that was a limitation of, the series at the time from a production standpoint, and then also from probably a censorship standpoint. But it makes it incredibly effective.
Yeah, I think it actually adds quite a bit to the power of the stinger. I think this is one of my favorite stingers of all the episodes because it has such a great cliffhanger at the end. You don't know what the monster looks like.
Yeah.
All you know is that it kills people instantly, and you don't ever even hear it coming, really.
Yeah.
So
and this
cool.
is from the same director and writing team as A Taste of Armageddon.
Yep.
Joseph Pevney and Gene L. Kuhn. On A Taste of Armageddon, Gene L. Kuhn had help with a story from Robert Hamner, but here it is the same director and writer, which I think is kind of neat. It's you got 2 episodes from the same creative team, if you will.
Yeah, it's definitely cool, and I think this episode profits from that. So just about everything in this episode is almost a perfect Star Trek episode, in my opinion. I think I've just tipped my hand a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it doesn't matter if I wait till the end to say this, but this is currently one of my very favorite, if not my favorite, Star Trek, the original series episode.
Now, do you have like is there a history behind that?
I have distinct memories of seeing this when I was a young kid, and I liked it a lot back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just really stuck with me over the years. And it's one of the ones I continue to love to rewatch over and over again. There's a lot of great moments in this episode. A monster that is non-humanoid, which is kind of rare for the original series. So a couple good humorous moments, a lot of really great stuff in here. But then again, here I am tipping my hand again.
Yeah. But you know what? That's funny because when I sat down to watch this for this recording, or this episode, I realized that this is one of the episodes that I've mentioned. There's a handful of Star Trek episodes that I've only seen once, and I couldn't remember watching this episode more than probably really early on when I first got into Star Trek. So it was almost like a lost episode for me.
Oh wow, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. So back to what's going on here for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
We found out that a distress call called the Enterprise in, and they referred to Janus 6 as a long-established colony. We didn't say how long. We'll find that out in a little while, but it's actually been there about 50 years.
Yeah.
So pretty interesting. And Kirk, Spock, and McCoy beam down to the planet with no security detail whatsoever.
Yeah, that's a very interesting observation.
Yeah, isn't that strange? You'd think if it was a distress call, they'd have some security guys there just in case.
Yeah, and can you imagine what the Enterprise's missions would have been like had they not kept getting these distress calls?
Yeah, how much further out could they have gotten if they didn't have to keep deviating? But
it seems like they kept getting caught up in these distress calls. They had to go clean up other people's messes.
Yeah. This is a really great bit of dialogue here. So,
and we also learn about Phaser 1 and Phaser 2 here.
Yeah, in another minute. So I thought it was pretty interesting that this guy says he got a shot off, and Spock immediately assumes that he meant you took a shot at it but didn't actually hit it.
Yeah.
So kind of funny little bit of dialogue there. It's Spock's kind of trying to poke a needle at the guy, but didn't wind up actually being correct.
Yeah, and there was a little bit of disdain there from this guy about
Mm-hmm.
thinking that the the Enterprise crew or Kirk and Spock are sort of acting like these badass cowboys, space cowboys, if you will. And he says, you can't get your ship down in these tunnels to to use your high tech, powerful weaponry.
Yeah. So, and it's kind of interesting because we as viewers know that Kirk and Spock have seen all kinds of stuff in their travels, and that's why they don't even appear to be scared at all, despite the fear running through the colonists that have seen this thing murdering tons and tons of people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's been stated yet, but there's a body count of close to 50.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
quite
know
a
they
bit.
do say 50, but I'm not sure if they're counting people that have yet to die.
Yeah. Well, we'll see a couple more. That little silicone nodule that's sitting there on the desk.
Mhm. Which is said a couple different ways during the episode. Spock seems to say silicon.
Yep, silicon,
And
silicon.
McCoy says silicone.
Yeah, it is said a couple of different ways, but those are actually little toy bouncing balls that are painted
Oh, okay.
to look that way. So when you see the big pile of them later on, it's just a pile of big children's bouncing kickballs or whatnot painted to look like that.
Oh,
So,
that's neat.
And you know what really threw me for a loop a little bit, though, now that I was a little bit older and started to understand more about what was going on. I mean, these guys are miners.
Mhm.
They see all manner of rocks all over the place. Wouldn't they think that finding a bunch of perfectly spherical rocks is a little bit odd? You don't see perfectly spherical rocks in nature. So it's strange that they have these things, and there's thousands of them down there, but they don't kind of put two and two together that they're significant in any way.
Yeah,
know?
that's a good point.
It's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
So Spock seemed very fascinated by it. And we just lost another guy.
Mhm. Now, on the Mud episode we watched,
Mm-hmm.
what were they doing down on that planet? They weren't mining, but they were doing something, right? Were they harvesting energy?
I'm not sure. I thought they were mining, but
Okay, yeah. I got a hint of those guys hanging out on that planet looking for women on the Mud episode.
yeah, these guys seem a little bit more. Look at that. He has to press a button to open the door.
Mm.
Isn't that very contrary to Star Trek?
Yeah.
He has to actually reach under the desk. It's almost like a panic button.
Yeah, you can, but like you said, this establishment has a couple of decades behind it.
Oh yeah.
So, their technology could be decades behind as well.
That's possibly true. I love how Spock stops Kirk from touching the potentially corrosive acid here.
Yeah, and that reminded me of Alien.
It reminded me of that too. And this section of set here is actually the same apparatus that Kirk phasered during The Enemy Within.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so pretty neat.
Yeah, it's nice. Nice repurposing.
Yeah, they do that quite a bit. So
they've been robbed.
They have. So they've lost a part that helps to provide heat and life support and airflow for the entire colony. So now they're really in a tough spot.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look good. So they mentioned earlier in this episode, we missed it. They mentioned this significant ore or element that they're mining down there called pergium.
Yeah.
Which Kirk seems to be very, very insistent upon getting back into production. But strangely, pergium itself doesn't wind up getting mentioned again on the original series or in the animated series. In fact, it doesn't get mentioned again in Star Trek until Deep Space Nine.
Wow, so a Deep Space Nine writer must have been bored one night.
Yep. An episode called Prodigal Daughter had several pergium mines in it, one owned by the Ferengi. And further on, it's finally mentioned again in an episode of Voyager called Fair Trade, where it was needed to regenerate the filters of Voyager's environmental systems, and they wound up having to do some trading to try to get some. So pergium, as important as Kirk says it is, doesn't get a lot of play.
Yeah.
in Star
That's
Trek.
kind of cool though that they they did find uses for it in future series.
Yeah, a lot of things. It's amazing how many the beginnings of how many things you see in the original series that show up later on in other series.
Yeah, I gotta say, if I was running one of those spin-off series, I would have had a constant rotation.
Mm-hmm.
I would have had a room at the studio, at Paramount, a viewing room that just had the original series on a loop, and you brought the writers in 3 at a time.
Yep.
Said you're going to stay here, you're going to watch it 4 episodes, and then rotate out. 24 hours a day.
Well, that would have helped
just
continuity.
as a way to sort of get these, people, get their eyes on the original series and help generate ideas.
Yeah, I agree. I completely
Because,
agree.
you have this incredible world to build, but at the same time, you have so much material that you can use that's already been established.
Definitely. So Spock has now theorized that the creature is not a carbon-based life form as we're all used to seeing and experiencing. In fact, he thinks it may be silicone-based or silicon-based life, to which McCoy laughed off. But Kirk seems to be buying into that theory, and pretty passionately. And it's pretty cool because Kirk, he is kind of showing that he has the ability to think on his feet. So he's building on Spock's theory, speculating on what the creature could be made of an armor plating because it has to live comfortably in an all rock environment, things like that. So it's pretty neat that you've got this trinity of guys here.
Yeah.
And this is a great team building moment for them as they all kind of put their brains togetger.
Yeah.
And try to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. And I think we're going to have a great McCoy moment here.
Yes.
Where he's going to take a step forward, as he thinks Spock is going to say some stuff that would embarrass him, right?
Yeah, and Spock refuses to keep speculating because he doesn't want to give McCoy any more ammo, as it were. So yeah, Kirk's questioning Spock's fascination with the round silicon sphere, and there are thousands of them down the lower levels. So Spock, of course, is seeing the significance of this perfectly spherical rock where nobody else does. They just kind of dismiss it as it's just something they found laying around. Mm-hmm. So Kirk is asking Spock to speculate. McCoy steps up.
Yeah,
waiting for something. Look at him, like he's got his head tilted. He's waiting patiently.
Yeah, he sort of turns his ear towards him.
It's great.
It was such a fun moment for me because I was like, wow, McCoy's McCoy's ramping it up here a little bit. He's like, twisting the knife almost.
Yeah, really. You notice that it's funny that Kirk doesn't seem to be overly concerned about all of the colonists who've already died.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
I was going to say, the one thing that I found in this episode is, I don't know if Kirk was reading a lot of, poetry or eating a lot of, granola, but he seemed pretty chill in this episode. And
I was going to say that. And, in the past, we've seen him get pretty amped up when there's a threat.
Yeah.
And in this, he just really stays totally cool and even.
Yeah.
All throughout. Pretty interesting.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's out of character by any means, but it just seemed like he was definitely going through a phase here. I picture him, discovering, a new poet or, factoring something new into his diet that sort of, soothed him a little bit.
Yeah. So question for you. Is this the most red shirts we've seen in a single scene yet?
I think so.
That's six
and
guys.
The fact that they all survive too.
I think one bites it.
Okay, yeah.
One bites it. But you see 6 red shirt security guys in one shot. I think that's the most we've seen so far.
Yeah.
But something tells me we may see more than that. So we also skipped over we missed the mention of Phaser 2 versus Phaser 1. So this is the only episode that does that.
I'm sorry?
So this is the only episode that makes the distinction between Phaser 1 and Phaser 2.
Yeah. So that's basically Phaser 1 is the little part that sits on top.
Yep.
And 2 is the actual...
The whole handheld
with the handle.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that was a pretty neat sort of clarification for me.
Yeah, because you wonder. But it's funny that's the only time they ever talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. It
pretty
definitely. I was embarrassed to be like, I don't know what they're talking about here.
Yeah. You notice, and there's another funny thing here. Kirk and Spock are off on their own without any additional security, with them in a really dangerous scenario.
Yeah.
No one has survived an attack by this creature yet. They figure, we're cool enough to handle this.
Mm-hmm.
And Spock has modified the settings on his tricorder that he can sort of track a silicon-based life form.
Yeah.
So, and they're going to actually track this thing down. And I think this is the red shirt that bites it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yep. And here we go. And little noise is coming up behind him. Are those a set of weights on the floor?
Yeah, well, I think that's what they are in real life, but I'm not sure what they were for Star Trek.
Yeah. Did you notice we got a little glimpse of the creature there?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool. So we still don't know exactly what it looks like. Up, and there it is, the melted guy. And strangely, his phaser is unharmed. Never even had a chance to fire. Up. So they're speculating that the creature must still be around because it was only seconds. They actually ran over and found him just after the creature got a hold of him. Look at that look on Kirk's face. It's one of his own. Now he's a little more personally invested in the situation.
Yeah.
And you notice how nonchalantly they're walking around, though. Despite having a guy just got completely dissolved.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So somehow Spock can tell that tunnel was only made moments ago. But we're learning a little bit more about the creature itself. Because, that Kirk says that tunnel goes far beyond where their eyes can see up. And there it is. The introduction of the Horta itself. And it's our one of very few non-humanoid aliens that we're going to see on this show. So pretty cool, man. Pretty cool. A couple little side notes about the Horta now that we've seen it. The costume for the Horta was actually designed before the script for this episode was written.
Yeah, wasn't it used in another show?
The basis of it, the basis for the Horta, they're both designed by the same guy. It was used in the final episode of the Outer Limits series called The Probe, and this version of the Horta was designed for Star Trek, but after displaying the costume to the writers and to Roddenberry, they said, "What is it?" And they said, "Well, it is whatever you want it to be." So they said, "Well, we'll write a script about it." So they actually wrote a script to fit that creature. Yeah.
That guy was actually in the suit as well, right? That's Yanis Prohaska.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Hungarian actor.
Yes,
stunt
sir.
Performer, yeah.
Yeah, it must be pretty grueling to crawl around with that costume on.
Yeah.
But pretty cool. I like how the back of it, even the piece that's detached, that's been blown off the creature, still kind of pulses like that.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like hamburger meat or something, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Looks like some kind of cheesy sauce and meatball or something stuck in there. It's like when Mom would make a tray of meatballs with sauce and then you'd stick it in the fridge overnight, and you pull it out the next day, and that's what it would look like.
What's funny? You mentioned that this is one of the only non-humanoids, I guess, if we count the tribbles.
Mm-hmm. Very few.
But that might be the thing that made me sort of off balance with this creature.
Really?
Yeah, because we're so used to seeing, or at least I'm so used to seeing, humanoid-like creatures in Star Trek that I don't know. There was something that kind of threw me off with this creature, and it might be the rubbery look of it, or being so low to the ground like that, and it really looks like it belongs in the '60s.
Potentially, but I'll put myself out there for the ire of Star Trek fans who may be listening to this and say one of my very few nitpicks about Star Trek in general is that I felt that there were too many humanoid aliens. They're always meeting aliens that have 2 arms and 2 legs and a head.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was kind of refreshing when you saw an alien that didn't look like a guy in a suit.
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, something like the Horta or the Tribbles was great. I thought finally, we're going to see something different here that isn't necessarily limited to, human type motion, and they can kind of use their imaginations to write something a little bit different.
I want to have you start keeping your eye out for something, and maybe you noticed this already, but is it me, or are there a handful of moments where they do like shots from like behind Kirk where it doesn't look like Shatner?
Yeah, because that's his stand-in.
Oh, okay. Is it really? I
Yeah,
didn't have a
yeah.
chance to dig through and do the research on that.
Yeah, there's quite a few scenes in this that actually have his stand-in, because he was actually offset for a bit.
Oh, wow. So it was one of those things where, and instead of saying, "Oh, we're going to work around the production schedule, we're just going to move forward with the stand-in."
Yeah. Oh, here's another scene, and our record has now been broken.
Yes, look at that. They've called in more.
8 red shirts in a single scene.
More fuel for the fire.
Amazing. What a glorious sight that is. All doomed men. Not necessarily. But, there was a line in here that we were talking about something else, and it passed, but interesting. Something that sets a precedent for future Star Trek episodes and will become almost part of the prime directive, I guess, is Spock surmises that the Horta is the last of its kind, and to kill it would be a crime against science.
Yes.
So, Kirk, and right here, he actually Spock instructed the security guys to capture the beast, and Kirk quickly turned around and supplanted that order, saying no.
Yeah.
Needs to be killed. But this kind of establishes a lot about Spock and his interest in science. And here's another great exchange, by the way, that Kirk, I think he felt that Spock was going to jeopardize this mission to put people in danger, so he's trying to send him away to go work with Scotty on keeping the reactor going, and Spock is actually going to convince him to let him stay by quoting him odds.
Yes.
He quotes him the odds to say, the odds of us both dying to this creature are 2,228.7 to 1.
Yeah.
And Kirk, it's the little humor music starts playing, and do, and Spock said, "Well, yeah." Kirk said, "Well, you know what? I guess if those are really the odds, then I guess you can stay, but stay out of trouble."
Yeah. How do you even calculate those odds, though?
I don't know.
Do you base it on the amount of people that have been killed so far? Oh, and somehow factor in the time frame that those deaths occurred?
Your guess is as good as mine, but with a mind as powerful as Spock's, I am not going to doubt the fact that he could do it.
I bet you there is a Trek fan out there who has done the calculations. Somebody, a math professor who's also a Trek fan.
Yep. Hit us up if you do. Hit us up if you do. If you can explain how Spock could come up with that number, you let us know. It's a very strange number.
Yeah. So this what's his name here? Shem. I don't even know his name.
Well, the
Schmitter.
The Scotty's makeshift apparatus has blown up.
Yeah.
And now they've got 48 hours. 10 hours. Sorry,
Yeah.
Vandenberg. They've got 10 hours in which to get that piece back from the Horta, which is interesting because all we've seen of the Horta so far is that it's a blob-like creature that can dissolve people with some sort of acid. So how did it actually reach in there and grab that piece, disconnect it, and haul it away somewhere? Is there like a little arm underneath or something? I always wondered that.
Yeah. I don't want to speculate too much because it might get gross.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. If anybody has any speculations, let us know. We'd love to hear.
So as I was all confused about Schmitter versus Vandenberg, I was just going to say that Vandenberg is played by Ken Lynch, who seemed to play a cop a lot.
Well, that makes sense. He kind of looks like a cop.
Yeah.
Did you notice that Spock somehow was able to know that they were being watched?
Yeah.
Is that like another Vulcan power?
Yeah, I don't know that, or if he's just, he's really tuned in.
Oh, well, that's possible too. Now, here's a very key moment. You know, Kirk is insisting that they split up almost whimsically. He's smiling.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess he feels very cocky and confident because he knows that Phaser 2 can hurt the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, he has to hope that, you know, he doesn't get snuck up on by this, because it obviously can jump out pretty quickly.
Yeah. And this tracking shot here felt very cinematic.
It
for
did.
Me. We've talked about cinematic moments in Star Trek, and that was a very, for me, that was a very cinematic move.
Yeah, followed by some very great lighting and camera work in these tunnels.
Mm-hmm.
The use of light and shadow here, with them crouching down and walking around a little, you really feel like they're confined, even though you know those are kind of makeshift little fabric, you know, tunnels that they made. But it looks like they're actually in some sort of a... Look at Spock walking in the light and behind him, and his face gets shadowed.
Yeah.
Very foreboding. And Kirk has stumbled into an area that has a lot of those silicon nodules, or the painted rubber balls.
So do you think like somebody, you know, low in the production department had to like run out to all the local supermarkets to find these balls?
I bet you they ordered them from some overseas supplier. But,
they probably made that company's, you know, nut for the year.
Yeah, they probably did. Now, we saw the Horta has just caused a cave-in. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know, it took out some sort of a little pillar there. And see, this moment right here, I think, is really key to Spock's character. You see how concerned he's getting?
Yeah.
He drops the formality and starts calling him Jim.
Yeah.
That, for a character who is emotionless as Spock, to break like that, I think is really significant. In fact, Nimoy himself has said it in some interviews that he loved the fact that he was able to connect with Kirk like that in this episode.
Yeah, and there'll be another episode this season where he sort of has a similar reaction in Amok Time, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's coming up very soon. Beginning of S2. Oh, here's a remastered shot of the Horta coming out of the wall, which I think is pretty cool. They made it a little like a fiery, melty. And the zoom in and fade to the. Oh nope. Kirk is in some serious trouble. Fade to commercial.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't actually think that the remaster really improved too much on the on what they had done originally.
It was a slight alteration, but cool nonetheless.
Yeah, I think they only had so much they could work with because they were actually there was something that they couldn't really sort of completely replace.
Yeah, and you know,
I wonder if there were times where they said, "Hey, can we do a completely digital Horta?"
I wonder. But did you notice that Kirk doesn't immediately shoot this thing?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is really cool.
I'm telling you, man, he must have been. This was him going through a phase.
I don't know. Maybe it's him. Maybe it's him growing. Maybe it's the character of Kirk growing and learning from his past mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the mark of a great Starfleet captain, is that
and
he
there's,
can
I
learn
think, a
from
double
his
shot.
There was from the back there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, Spock is going to just learn that that the Horta is actually right in front of Kirk, and this is a really cool moment for Spock as well, because you can hear and taste the concern. Spock is telling Kirk to kill it.
Yeah.
What a reversal.
Yes.
Right? So you have Kirk who wanted to kill it. Now he's not killing it. And Spock who didn't want to kill it, who's telling Kirk to kill it. So pretty amazing. And you can't take the risk. Your life is in danger.
Yeah.
But Kirk is not willing to take that shot because the creature is not advancing on him.
Yeah. Everybody else who's spent mere seconds with the creature has been turned to cinders. But
but Kirk feels that there's something more there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we're going to find out that he's actually right. But this is interesting to me that he didn't fire immediately on sight. I mean, you would have thought that the second it came out of that wall, that phaser would have been firing.
Yeah.
You know, but this is really interesting, and he tries to talk to it.
Yeah, he's sort of like, hey, we're at a standoff here. How are we gonna do this?
Yeah, and strangely, the Horta seems to understand what he's talking about and kind of swirls around to show him the injury.
Yeah, he shows him the fried egg on his back.
Yeah, poor thing. So yeah, they're just gonna kind of hang out there, and You know, Kirk's waiting for the Horta to do something. And he's telling Spock not to shoot.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And, you know, the scientific side of Spock is going to kick in, and he's going to kind of lower the phaser and kind of come over to where Kirk is. So pretty neat. So the Horta, a couple more notes on the Horta. You know, a lot of iconic Star Trek monsters and aliens wind up making appearances again later on, but the Horta is another one of those that doesn't make appearances again in any of the other series and only shows up in books. So there are a couple of instances where it showed up in a comic, and the first one is in a DS9 novel actually called The Devil in the Sky, and it's sort of a quasi-sequel to the episode that we're watching right now. The Horta themselves are enlisted to help rebuild the mining industry on Bajor.
Oh, cool. So they sort of fly him in?
Yeah, and the Cardassians somehow kidnap the mother Horta, which leaves Cisco dealing with a bunch of newly hatched Horta with no mother to teach them what to do. So they're kind of eating through DS9, the station.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah, another. And there's also a Star Trek comic. Now, this is right up my alley, and I'm going to seek this out because I've never read this. It depicts an attempted Borg invasion of Janus 6. So you get Borg versus Horta. Right up my alley, man.
Oh, that is great.
So I am going to be looking that up, seeing if I can get a copy of that. So I read a short synopsis, and I am intrigued. So Kirk is asking, Spock to try the mind meld on the Horta, and we're going to see that the mind meld is not only restricted to humanoids, but he can actually mind meld with, I guess, anything that's sentient.
Yeah, and I remember you mentioning this in an earlier episode, but I don't remember we saw it where he does the mind meld without touching it.
Yeah, I guess there's different strengths of mind melds because he can only get so much without actually touching something, because he does a second mind meld in a little while where he actually lay his hands on the Horta.
Yeah.
To get deeper into some sort of communication, I guess, two-way, maybe. But he's feeling the Horta's extreme pain right now. I guess they did more damage to it than they thought. And we're getting a little bit of an interesting effect here that Spock is getting emotional and physical transference from the mind meld. So he's actually feeling the pain.
Yeah, it almost seemed to me like he was acting as a medium here.
Yeah, kind of conveying a message and the feeling. And here is an iconic moment where the Horta actually communicates in savvy English. No Kill I, which has become the name of a punk band, by the way.
Okay, I was going to say a band had to have used that.
Yeah, punk band.
And I'd imagine there's probably a bunch of tattoos out there as well.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it. Actually, I have one.
Okay.
Yeah, it says it right on my heart. So when you go to give me the defibrillator, it says No Kill I. But
yeah, and it's cool because Kirk's not sure if that means that it doesn't want them to kill it, or if it's saying, "Hey, I'm now that I know what you guys are about, I'm not going to kill you."
Yeah, exactly. And it's not, and they say Spock is not acting like a wounded creature, and we get the name the Horta.
Mm-hmm.
So it calls itself a Horta. So they need Kirk is now asking Spock to reestablish communication to try to get the device back so that they can get the colony back up and running.
Yeah, one thing I really liked here was Kirk's sort of pleasure at meeting this race that no one has really ever interacted with.
Yes, I mean, I think he realizes, that it's now his duty to save this thing somehow.
Yeah.
While also saving the colonists, but he realizes the not only the scientific but the human reason to save the creature. I mean, the compassion to save another race that's peaceful.
Yeah.
Obviously it doesn't have the desire to harm Kirk or Spock, they've been able to communicate with it.
Yeah.
And now it's just finding a way to save it, and also save it from the colonists who are pretty hell-bent on killing it.
Mm-hmm.
So the poor Horta, obviously seething in pain. Now Spock is going to go back and actually touch it. I think this is actually kind of neat. It's pretty well acted, actually, by the guy inside that costume. Because it's kind of quivering. Now, when Spock goes to put its hands on it, you can see it's going to start to shiver a little bit here. See, I think that's a pretty cool acting job by the guy underneath it.
Yeah,
he's really selling it.
That performer died in a plane crash while working on a TV show in 1974.
Oh, wow, the year I was born. That's a shame.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Actually, I didn't even think about that. It was less than a month before I was born.
Wow, that's a shame.
Yes, him and 34 other people working on the show.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So it looks like the colonists are they've armed themselves with clubs and bats and boards with nails in them.
Yeah, they're like the angry mob from The Simpsons.
Yeah. Then the only thing holding them back is 3 of the red shirt security guys. And here we have another iconic and much repeated Spock moment from the show, where we're the extreme pain, the pained speaking, which actually was quite amusing for Shatner. Got a couple good laughs out of Spock's performance here, but you got to hand it to Nimoy. What a professional, man! He really, really sells. He really sells it. There's not a minute of this that I don't doubt that he's feeling physical pain.
Yeah.
I mean, the performance is fantastic. You got
yeah, because there's also a lot of subtle stuff in it.
Yeah, all the little things he's saying.
Mm-hmm. But even if you watch his overall body motions, as well, you look at his hands and you look at his eyes and his face. I mean,
absolutely.
There's a lot of different levels to that performance.
Oh, definitely. I think one of his best in the series. And enter McCoy, and this is great because Kirk is just saying, "Listen, man, you're a doctor, fix it.
Yeah,
you're a healer, heal it."
Yeah, this might be one of Kirk's most unreasonable moments on the show.
You think?
Because logically, there's no reason to think that McCoy will be able to do anything.
I don't know, man. I
mean, not to discount McCoy's abilities as a doctor, but he even says that he's a doctor, not a bricklayer. But I guess maybe Kirk's not unreasonable as much as he has faith in McCoy's ability, much like he has faith in Scotty's ability to fix the Enterprise when it's broken.
Yeah, well, just like Scotty has to improvise with his knowledge and expertise, so does Dr. McCoy. And just like you said, he's a doctor, not a bricklayer. And this is the first time that the famous McCoy line, "I'm a doctor, not a blank," has been used in the series, and it's become an iconic bit of dialogue that people refer to quite a bit.
Yeah, you even have people that have never watched an episode of Star Trek, reciting or putting their own spin on it.
Yeah, exactly. So this another first for this episode. Something that gets repeated quite often by fans and actors alike. Spock's still mind melding, and the Horta, even though it's convinced that it's going to die, is actually telling Kirk where to find the piece of machinery that he needs.
Yeah.
So
the Chamber of the Ages, which is such a cool name.
It is. It sounds like another band name.
Yes. Like that's like sort of a prog rock one though.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely a prog rock one. But that actually speaks volume. And the Vault of Tomorrow. It's another one. Another prog band.
Well, that's the Chamber of Ages, and the album or the sequence of songs is called The Vault of Tomorrow.
Ah, very good. Sounds like some kind of a Yes offshoot solo album or something. Or
some
side
alternate
project.
late 60s reality. There's that band had quite a career.
Yes, they certainly did. I'm a huge fan. So, but I think it says a lot about the Horta that it realizes that it could be dying here, and it's willing to forego its taste for revenge, and allow the humans to live.
Yeah.
I think that speaks a lot for the Horta. So not only did they say it's a peaceful creature, but it's kind of proving its worth here.
Yeah, it's, sort of that, that spin on, the monster isn't as terrifying as you think.
No, and that's actually a really good message.
Mm-hmm.
In
Yeah,
fact,
well, it's basically don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, actually, that's absolutely right. Absolutely right. And, it's something that I think that we all could learn a little bit from. And the Angry Mob. The Angry Mob is back again.
Yeah, and the lead engineer here is Barry Russo, who we will see on a later episode playing a different character on the Ultimate Computer. So we'll have to keep an eye out for him.
Ah, that's a great episode, too. Yeah, that's a great
completely different character. So not the first actor to play multiple characters on Star Trek, and I'm sure not the last.
Nah, definitely won't be the last.
Yeah.
Definitely won't be the last. Kirk has come across a pile of silicon nodules, and some of them are broken and shattered. So potentially, not just plain old rocks, eh?
Yeah, they look like eggs that have been hatched.
Yep. And it looks like potentially the human miners who stumbled onto this chamber have broken open some of these eggs or destroyed them.
Oh, yeah, okay. You know what? For some reason, I thought that those were the result of hatching.
No, I thought that's why the Horta's pissed in the first place.
Yeah.
So,
but she directed Kirk to that place.
Yes, because that's where she
she's saying,
stored the.
This is where you're going to
machinery.
find out why I'm pissed, and then I'm going to send you to where I hid the piece you need.
Yeah, you have to go through there. Maybe
right.
that's
Okay.
her.
All right. Cool. I can.
Yeah.
I didn't follow that.
So, there's actually a quote here that I'll read. A quote by Arthur C. Clarke about this particular episode.
Oh, cool.
He said this is the only episode he could recall of Star Trek was The Devil in the Dark, and he said that it impressed him because it presented the idea, unusual in science fiction then and now, that something weird, even dangerous, need not be malevolent. This is a lesson that many of today's politicians have yet to learn. He said that in 1995.
Yeah, Arthur C. Clarke was quite a mind.
Yes, he was. Very prolific. Very prolific. So, Spock now has said that those are definitely her eggs, and the miners must have destroyed them.
I must have been daydreaming at that point.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Oh, and boom.
Ooh. Oh, man. The red shirts, they're not dead, but man, did they take a beating.
Yeah, I mean, that the head one, he took a shot right to the back of the head from that, aluminum bat.
Wow. Now, this is great. This is a great moment. The first man that fires is dead.
Yep.
Wow.
And they believe it, too.
Yeah. And Kirk hits him with the big stunner.
Yeah, dummies.
You're killing her eggs. Now, you've killed thousands of her children. And boy, it's good on them because they seem to immediately lower their weapons and say, wait a minute, you know what, we really screwed up.
Yeah.
They don't say, to hell with it, he killed our people, let's kill it anyway.
Yeah. And then we get this sort of history where every 50,000 years, the race dies off save one who basically repopulates the species.
Yep, exactly. And they're peaceful and mild, and they were going to share the planet with the miners, had no problem with people until they started killing her baby. And he's relating it to any mother. Any mother, doesn't matter if it's an alien, a human, or what. When their children are threatened, they're going to fight back.
Yeah. And then the miner makes a good point. How could we have known?
That's true.
Yeah.
But I will refer to something that I said earlier, that as a miner, they see a lot of rocks, and they should have known that there's something different about these perfectly spherical piles of rocks that they came across.
Yeah.
They had to understand that the odds of... Have you ever in your life found a perfectly spherical rock? Don't think so.
I want to say yes.
The odds are very, very slim. And if you did find one, the odds of you finding 1,000 of them.
It
So-
would have to probably be on the beach somewhere, that had been, shaped like that after, years and years and years of exposure to the ocean.
Potentially, or a pearl.
Yeah.
From an oyster, clam, or whatever.
Do you think there's any relevance to the colors of the miners' jumpsuits?
No, I was reading a little bit earlier, and McCoy has saved
Yeah.
the Horta, but the jumpsuits themselves.
I could cure a rainy day.
That's a great one. That's a country doctor for you.
Yeah.
But the yellow jumpsuit is a single jumpsuit. He's the Vandenberg's the only one that wears that. The purple one is a singular one, and then all the other ones seem to be kind of, mass produced. So I don't think they have any specific significance. Just a way to tell those two characters apart from the rest.
I still got him confused.
So pretty awesome though that McCoy was able to save the Horta's life, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you know what? It took Kirk's sort of encouragement, or desperate encouragement, but encouragement nonetheless. And I guess that's what a good leader does is, they get the best out of their people, even when they realize they can't deliver the results that they're ultimately going to deliver.
Yeah, as a good captain, he.
Wow, and I never noticed that Uhura is not there. I guess they said, hey, there's no reason to come to set today to film one shot.
Yeah. So I'm going to say this, to me, the end of this episode, these last scenes on the bridge, the exchange between Kirk and Spock and McCoy is one of my favorite wrap-ups to a Trek episode. The humor that goes on between the three of them is almost series defining, character defining.
Sure.
To me, great stuff here.
Yeah. So basically, the Horta and its brood have uncovered all sorts of new elements, and in addition to the Perjurium or Pergium.
Yep. And now, so Spock is saying that the Horta was a little put off by human appearance, but she thought that the Spock's ears were the most attractive human trait, but he didn't have the heart to tell her that he wasn't human.
Yeah. And then Kirk's like, no, there's no way that Horta really liked those ears.
Yeah. And now Spock is saying, yeah, she's got impeccable taste. He's like, my captain, my modesty. But Kirk says, I suspect you're becoming more and more human all the time. And Spock is obviously insulted. There's no reason to stand here and be insulted.
Yeah.
Classic moment.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I guess as we wrap up, as you said, you sort of tipped your hand already. But I guess we'll talk about the essential nature of this episode.
Yeah, I did tip my hand, but there do have to be reasons for me to call an episode essential aside from just me liking it. Mm-hmm. So, but in this case, I do say this is an essential episode for several reasons. One is it fits the memorable villain rule. So it does have a memorable alien / villain who doesn't turn out to be a villain in the end. But the Horta is an ongoing and lasting Star Trek alien. So a lot of people know who the Horta is. It's been mentioned again. So that qualifies for me. Some fantastic character moments between Kirk and Spock. You can see Kirk growing as a captain and as a person by the way he reacts to the Horta, and not shooting it and killing it immediately, and actually allowing it to live and helping it to recover from its injuries. I think that's fantastic. We find out that a mind meld can happen between any Vulcan and a sentient being. Doesn't have to be a human or another Vulcan. And the introduction of the Phaser 2 thing, the explanation of Phaser 2 is nice. So, few good reasons that I consider this essential.
Yeah, I'll sort of just piggyback on that and say, really, for me, the defining essential moment of this episode was sort of the expansion of the rules or the possibilities of the mind meld.
Very good. Very good.
I will sign off on this and call it an essential episode. And it's a fun watch as well.
Yeah, very, very cool watch. So again, I said it once already, but I'll say it again. This is one of my favorite Trek episodes of all time. and has been my favorite off and on. I mean, I do change back and forth between what my favorite is between, years here and there, but this has been on the top of my list ever since I was a young lad.
Excellent, excellent. And you definitely did a lot of homework for this episode and, presented a lot of cool and interesting facts that I hadn't known about this episode.
Oh, very good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, very cool discussion. And that brings us to the end of another episode. And, thank you as always for spending some time with us as we watch and talk about Star Trek. And you can find us over on the web at the tricordertransmissions.com, also on Twitter at TTT_pod. And we have a Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Tricorder Transmissions.
The Tricorder Transmissions.
Yeah. And we love interacting with listeners and fans of Star Trek on Twitter and on Facebook. So if you're inclined to do so, please join us. We love the conversations.
Yep. Hope to see you guys online, and hope to see you again next week.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Captain, the Horta is a remarkably intelligent and sensitive creature with impeccable taste.
Because she approved of you.
Really, Captain, my modesty.
Does not bear close examination, Mr. Spock. I suspect you're becoming more and more human all the time.
Captain, I see no reason to stand here and be insulted.